second home. We come to conquer, no we never walk alone. We dominate, the cream of the crop, drawing all our strength from the roar of the cock. It's all for one, and one for all. Pass a new, we're talking total football. Here we go again, Roy's red machine. Liverpool, the greatest team the world has ever seen.
Hello and welcome back to the Liverpool Groove. I am delighted to say that joining me today is the author of Little at 100 and his new book, Crossing the Park, Peter Kenny Jones. It's an honour to have you on, mate. How are you doing?
Oh, yeah, boss. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And looking forward to speaking about it.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So, first and foremost, congratulations on the new book. How excited are you for people to see all the work that's gone into it?
Yeah, maybe nervous more than anything else because this one might split a few decisions and fan bases and all that. Because I know it's not the most popular topic trying to bring Liverpool and Everton together. But obviously excited and hopefully people enjoy it. But as you say, it's maybe apprehensive of what some people might say, but hopefully it goes down well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it will do. I mean, I've got it on my Kindle there. I'm about halfway through it, and it's honestly it's a great read. And it's so insightful. Like I don't think even I realised like just how many had played for both clubs. I mean, you know the obvious ones, your Barnbys, your McMahons, your Beardsleys, and all stuff like that. And then beyond that, it's very eye opening. So it's great. What was the inspiration behind wanting to do this as your next book?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for all that. And it's just I was interested. Basically, I looked at how many there was, and then if you think off the top of your head without researching it, you can't name too many. And then I just started looking into who they were. Obviously, as you say, like people like Nick Barmby, I think everyone remembers and jumps to. And then you just think, why is he so like negatively thought of? And obviously you understand why, because the way he did it. But a few months later, Abel Xavier does exactly the same thing, and no one really cares about him. So it's just interesting to see how those two are different. And then you're looking into it, and you totally forget Sander Westerveld played for them and on an emergency loan. And then you carry on and then look at Connor Cody now. And I was just thinking the way that each player, and including the managers as well, like Rafa, obviously, who's a big one, the way that each of them was thought differently, it just made me think, well, let's dive into it a bit more and see what's going on. And obviously, the further you go back, you realise that the two clubs haven't always hated each other. They were looking out for each other for a large period of the history and this rivalry. And then when you go to the very start, like it was split because of John Holden, and it was a rivalry at the start, and he was trying to rub Everton's face in every Derby Day victory he could get. So it was just interesting, maybe looking at it through there and seeing when the rivalry changed. Like, was there a date? Was there a player that broke the relationship? And just by looking through them all, it's basically each player is different, and each man, I thought, just deserved to have at least their story told, and maybe just try and through that view how the relationship changed, how the city's changed, and everything really.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned like Nick Barmby and Abel Xavier there, and how they're looked at differently in terms of the move and things like that. Do you think it's anything down to the sort of success they had at the respective clubs? Obviously, Nick Barmby's time, you would say, was more successful at Liverpool than Abel Xavier's was.
Yeah, well, of course, and I think obviously what makes the difference is probably Nick Barmby was better, which you're obviously going to be more upset when your better players go. And I think there's a real argument at the time to say Nick Barmby was Everton's best player. So imagine your best player coming out, not just saying they want to leave, but saying they want to go and play for Liverpool. There's not many ways that can't go down in the way it did. And for him to do that, you can fully understand why everyone who's connected with Everton wants to cut ties with him. But then he comes to Liverpool, and he definitely wasn't as good for Liverpool in terms of his status within the club as he was at Everton, but he was part of that treble winning team, so he's definitely not going to regret the decision to burn his bridges, because the rest of his life he can look back on those medals he won. And as much as it must have been terrible for him at the time, in the book it says that his whole family had a police escort down Queen's Drive on Derby Day, and it definitely wouldn't have been a safe time probably for him to be walking about the city on his own. But I think now all said and done, he probably doesn't regret it. So you look at that one, you understand why he's happy, why Everton hate him, and why probably Liverpool fans are happy to laugh at the fact that they got one of the best players. But then Abel Xavier, he was kind of in and out of the Everton team as he was going, and they needed money, but there wasn't a good time for them. And and Marcus Babbel had just gone ill, and we needed a backup right back to help play in the Champions League. And basically, that's how they sold it to him. He said, if you join us, you'll be playing Champions League football next week. And that was all the convincing he needed. He wasn't really starting for Everton. They took any bid they could really get for him because they needed the money. So on that one, you can see, but obviously it worked best for everyone. Everyone kind of got the best of the situation. So again, I feel like I say this 5 million times, but each player is different, each transfer is different, and I think that's just what makes it interesting, because there is a right way to do it, there's a wrong way to do it, and it's just each person, each tale is different.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the very start, Tom Wiley was the first player, I believe, to transfer directly between the two clubs. At the time, how significant was that?
I think it was basically he chose John Holden over Everton. It wasn't really a Liverpool thing because Liverpool didn't exist. So there was 3 players in Liverpool's first ever game who had played for Everton, but they were basically they stayed with their boss. Obviously it wasn't really managers in those days. They just stayed with the owner of the club. So I think for them, obviously, there'll be people at Goodison Park when Everton played the first game when they'd have been looking at, 3 men who were in their team who've decided to stay over across the park, pardon the pun or the plug there, but they've decided to do that. Then they're obviously going to look down on them a bit, aren't they? So they probably wouldn't have helped their reputation. And Liverpool's first few games are played in front of tens of fans. It's not like it's a massive club straight away. They have the massive stadium that has been built up and was purpose built for Everton, and it just won the league in there. So it was a good stadium, but they were trying to work their way into the second division. They didn't have many fans, and John Holden kicks off the first ever game, and he's got 3 ex-Everton players there, and he tries to call Liverpool Everton Athletic to really spite Everton at the start. So it could have all been very different, but I think for those today, I don't think maybe they were necessarily hated or anything, but for them, they just made a professional decision to stay with the person who was paying their wages for the last year rather than go and join a new club, which both of them were splitting off into different things. And there was probably uncertainty over both of them. But yeah, I think for them, they probably weren't necessarily hated, but obviously they're all trailblazers and the first people to not cross the park but have played for both teams. I don't think that'll ever happen again. And that's those 3 men. So
absolutely. You mentioned John Holden there. Obviously, these players, leaving Everton to come to Liverpool, they're leaving behind first division football to play, not even second division at the time. How important was John Holden's influence at the time?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's well known the split with hiring the rent and over alcohol-related issues within the Everton board and the people who voted to leave Anfield and to leave John Holden. But obviously, he was a wealthy man, and he bankrolled Everton's success in the early years. Obviously, there were still wage caps and stuff like that, but he bankrolled the stadium being built up, and that was all out of his own pocket. And that's why he put the rent up, because he'd paid to make the stadium what it was. So he thought he deserved more money for it, and he wanted to start advertising his beer. So he started his own club, and he's got a reputation in the game. At least he's got a name, so he could pull a few strings. And Liverpool's first ever team is the team of Max, all Scottish players, and that's obviously where he had a good connection. And by convincing the 3 players that we mentioned then who were at Everton and stayed at Liverpool and building a team up, it showed that he had credentials in football. Liverpool go straight into the first division and they're winning league titles very quickly. So, he was a wealthy and successful businessman who obviously it worked well for him taking that risk, because you see where both clubs have gone. It maybe he got the better of the deal, but at the time he certainly took a massive risk, and it did pay off for him. It could have ended up in a massive stadium, cost him loads of money, and no one going there to watch him.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's definitely worked out for the better for our side of things. But it's amazing, isn't it? How it all just happened so quickly, and how, like you say, we were able to get success so quickly. And obviously, John Holden's was he was a big part of that. One team in the book that's mentioned a lot early on is Scottish side Renton. Is it fair to say both sides are somewhat, certainly in the early days, indebted to Renton for their respective successes?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's not someone I'd heard of before I started doing the research. I don't know about yourself before you saw the book,
absolutely.
But yeah, it's mad that how much influence they did have at the start, and they obviously were viewed as the greatest team in the world because they beat the English League champion. I think it was West Brom they beat, and that was deemed as like, that was the game that showed everyone that they were the greatest team. And obviously, I think Scotland still had a high regard. The football there was deemed like to be better football and talent in Scotland, and England was maybe a bit more, tackling and running into each other. But Scotland were deemed to play the game better. So to have those players coming from that team and going to Everton originally, and then obviously someone coming to Liverpool and trading in between, it shows that they were coming from good stock. So to have Renton as a feeder club, and if that's the best club in the world, and they were feeding a lot of talent to Liverpool, either just the city or just to Everton at the time, to have those style of players and talented players obviously was a massive buzz. And once they got found out they were legally paying the players, I think that's probably what helped Liverpool and Everton even more, because they could offer them more money in England and convince them to move down. But as you see in the book, like, they were getting homesick and going back to Scotland and all that, which nowadays you think people coming from the other side of the world getting homesick is maybe you're overreacting a bit, but they're coming from Scotland. But it just shows again how different the times are. But yeah, definitely I think Renton had a big role to play in some of the first trophies won in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was interested to see that Renton only, they weren't around for too long. I think they dissolved in like 1922. So to have so much success for themselves in a short period of time, and then for it to help both sides out is quite remarkable, really.
Yeah, well, definitely. They definitely had the maybe the roll of honour, or the trophies to say that they could be up there today if they still existed. You'd think they'd still be competing with the Celtic and the Rangers, the way if they'd carried on how they were going. But he said I think they fell on the financial difficulties and got found out a few times trying to fiddle the books, and that's probably what led to their undoing. But yeah, as you say, it is remarkable just looking at them and how much influence they had in the early days of just Scottish football and Liverpool and Everton, and then just seeing, you look at them, you give them a quick Google and you see they don't even exist, didn't exist for very long, and the distant memory for everyone. But yeah, as to say, have a huge role to play.
Yeah, absolutely. So bringing it more to the present now, there've recently been rumours on Twitter, and I don't know how concrete these are, of course, with it being Twitter, but there have been rumours that Liverpool have been interested in Jared Brantwaite, who of course is on loan at PSV from Everton. While it's unlikely, how significant would that be if that move happened?
Well, huge. As you said before, Apples have faced the last 20 odd years, and it's 21 years since it's happened, maybe more. For that to happen again, of course that's significant. That there's a reason it hasn't happened that long. And it would make headlines again, whether because he spent a season away on loan, and it might make it less volatile for him, because it's not like he's playing there right now and in the next season he's playing at Anfield. But still, it would make huge headlines. You see, people like Conor Cody, as I said before, he's only on loan at Everton and he didn't go directly, and that still created a bit of a media storm, didn't it? So for him to make a direct transfer would be massive news, and it's hard to fathom why it hasn't happened more often or hasn't happened more recently than anything else. And yeah, I think it would be a massive deal, and it just would be hard to see how Liverpool and Everton can sit on the same negotiating table and come out with something. But with what's going on at Everton at the moment, and fighting for their lives and a new stadium, they might be forced to do a bit of a fire sale this summer, and maybe like with what happened with Abu Zavi, their arm might be forced, and that they have to accept offers for players who want to go. And so maybe that context makes it easier for Braithwaite if he did come. But as you say, it's all rumours and speculation, and these things happen a lot. But yeah, I think no matter what, the next direct transfer will be massive, and it's just hard to see when that may or may not happen.
Yeah. As you mentioned there, Xavier was the last one, I think it was 21 years ago now, to move directly between clubs. Do you think the reason more haven't happened in the last 20 or so years is down to the sort of growing animosity between the two sets of fans? It seems to have really deteriorated the relationship between the two sets of fans over the last I wouldn't even say over the last 20 years. I think it's more over the last 10 years or so. It really seems to have gone to a really dark place. Do you think that's a key factor to it?
Yeah, I think because if you're an agent of a player maybe, and you're saying to them, if you go there, you've almost taken two steps back before you go, and maybe the team welcoming the player in will be joyous. It all depends on the player. As you said with Rafa Benitez, if he was at the peak of his powers and he was convinced to go to Everton when he did, then they'd all be loving the fact that he was going, and they'd rub it in Liverpool fans' faces because he'd won the European Cup. But the way he came, it maybe wasn't at the very top of his game. He comes from having managed in China and stuff like that, and he's coming to try and save them. Then that changed the context of that. So, yeah, I think it is going to be massive news when it next happens. But, again, even as we said with Conor Cody, it wasn't like Liverpool fans absolutely hate him, and it's not like Everton fans didn't welcome him with open arms. So, again, it just depends on the player. But, I've said a few times as well, like Bill Kenwright, I'm not sure if he has a role to play. I know he's not exactly the most popular man for Everton fans, but he's the only only man at the hierarchy of both clubs who's a boiled red or a boiled blue, who makes real decisions, and whether he doesn't want that to happen because, there's Liverpool connections, he doesn't want to sell to them, doesn't want to buy players off them, you don't know, and whether maybe even when he leaves the club that changes. But, I think if you're an agent of a player, as I said before, and you're getting offers off Liverpool or off Everton, you're probably going to have similar offers from teams around them, and maybe it's a safer move to go somewhere else and just not have the animosity. Because, as I said before, if you see with Rafa, he had a good start, but as soon as things start going wrong, both sets of fans have got a stick to beat you with straight away, haven't they? You used to play for Everton, you used to play for Liverpool, and it's probably not going to go down too well. But yeah, sadly, it does look like that does have a big role to play, the rivalry at the moment.
Yeah. Speaking of Rafa, were you shocked when he took the Everton job?
When you look into it, no. I think maybe the reports were shocking because maybe you wouldn't expect that Everton would want him or he'd want to go there. But he still lives in Merseyside, he lives on the Wirral, and for him it was a very professional decision, wasn't it, to just stay in his home, not have to live away from his wife and kids. And you're probably not going to get the Liverpool job ever again. So if you get Everton, that's the next best thing. If you're someone who's living in the city and wants to work there, he's still now very publicly saying he wants to be in the Premier League, isn't he? Because he wants to stay at home. So that's literally the best job, maybe other than Tranmere, he could get. And I don't think Tranmere could afford him. So, I think it's surprising in the fact you think, as a Liverpool fan, maybe you expect that you might feel hurt and think, oh, we thought that we meant more to you than that. And obviously that would upset you, shock you. But if you look at it from him, he doesn't see it as a conflict of interest or anything. It's a purely professional decision. And probably the best club in the world he could have got an offer of, other than Liverpool, was Everton, which is hard for Liverpool fans to fathom. But I think when you look at it through his glasses, maybe, and it might make more sense.
Yeah, I think that was the thing with it. I think Liverpool fans did understand his reasons for doing it. And even now, I don't think there's any Liverpool fan who has any hatred towards him or animosity towards him. Do you understand? Like you say, he still lives on Merseyside. His family love it here. So it made sense in that. I think it was, people were looking at it like he's not going there because he wants to manage Everton. He's going there because he wants to be close to his family. And like you say, it was a professional decision. So,
well, if he wins a cup with them and wins the league with them, then I think that changes very quickly, doesn't it? So I think it helps for Liverpool fans that he didn't do very well, and obviously the whole agent Rafa thing that went about. I think that makes it even better that he did go there, and maybe it wasn't a success. So it's it could all change, all could have changed very quickly. But I think he's probably kept his status quite high at Anfield.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the amount of players that have played for both clubs. Is it a bit surprising then that Rafa was only the second manager to have ever managed both clubs?
Yeah, well, hugely. I think that's obviously the first one, William Edward Barkley, and when you look into the chapter I did about him, he wasn't really a manager. He just sat in a boardroom and selected the team with the rest of the other board members. It wasn't like he was wearing a tracksuit on the training ground and giving formation and tactics out before games. He just was some man in a suit who helped select both teams. So Rafa really is the only person who's managed both teams, and that is a massive surprise as well. Obviously, I think Sammy Lee, someone I mentioned, who obviously followed Sam Allardyce to Everton and was part of coaching teams for a while at Anfield. So there has been people like that. But for managers, it's maybe it's worse for them, maybe it's better. I don't know. I could never see Jurgen Klopp going to Everton. I can't see Sean Dyche coming to Liverpool. But maybe you'd think over the years it would happen more. But I think managers are maybe so invested in the club and the city that it's hard for them to go to the other side. But you look at clubs in London and they swap players and swap managers like nothing, don't they? So it is. Yeah. It is interesting. It should be the same for players and managers, so it doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, I can't tell you why, but it is a surprise that there's only ever been one man ever to do it.
Yeah, it seems like a bigger thing in Liverpool and maybe Manchester than anywhere else. You see with like Birmingham and Villa, they've had, Alex and Cleach went directly from one to the other. They've had Liam Ridgewell played for like all three of them, didn't he? Birmingham, Villa,
Yeah,
West Brom. Then you've got, like you say, the London club. So it is. Maybe it's a northern thing. I don't know.
yeah, maybe
maybe
a bit meaner
maybe we care a bit
down
more.
here, up there. Sorry.
Yeah. um. So then, in your opinion, who's the best player to have played for both sides?
Well, in the book, I'm not sure if you're up to there yet, but after like the World War II players and maybe ones who are in more living memory, I went at the start of this season. I went to both grounds, asked 50 fans of each team, like out of 10, how much of a club legend is this player, and out of 10, how much of a traitor are they if they went to the other club after. And Peter Beardsley was the most widely respected player, so I think that answers the question really in itself, because if you're the most respected and acknowledged player for both fan bases, then that shows they're putting rivalries aside and can see that he was a very good player. So, I think it has got to be him. There's arguments for people like David Johnson, Steve McMahon, maybe, although Liverpool weren't at the peak at the time and definitely didn't get his best years, Dave Hickson, who was a massive player for Everton. But I think a player who managed to succeed at both clubs and show his talent at both clubs and is still respected by both clubs, I think Peter Beardsley probably is the best one. And that says a lot about what he was like as a player, because not only did he play for Liverpool and Everton, he played for Man City and Man United as well. So he couldn't have done more to upset every Liverpool or Everton fan for the teams he played with, but he's still respected. And I think, as I said, that just speaks volumes for how good of a player he was.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was going to mention that myself. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this yourself, in the women's game, is there doesn't seem to be the same sort of um, maybe indifference to moving between these types of clubs. I think I can't remember exactly which player it was, but there's one who went, I think, directly from Man City to Man United, and then has also gone directly from Liverpool to Everton, or the other way around. Why do you think that is? That it's not as sort of taboo in the women's game?
Yeah, but that was it's no question, because that's deliberately why it's called the men who dared to play for both. And I didn't want to just say those who did, because obviously the women's game, there's a lot more people who do it. I don't think maybe the intensity of supporters is there in the women's game. Though I went to the women's derby at Goodison, and I sat with my missus who's an Everton fan, and my other mate who's a Liverpool fan, and went with my auntie who's a Liverpool fan, and her fellas in Everton. In fact, we all sat together, and that
Yeah,
would never happen. Obviously, it happened back in the day in Merseyside derbies, but that wouldn't happen now. And I think, although women's football is definitely on the rise, and Liverpool fans of the men's team want to see the women's team do well, I don't think there's that ferocious rivalry and intensity in supporting them yet, which hopefully will come in the years. And you definitely want your team to win, but I just don't think that we're quite there in terms of the hatred for the other side, if you know what I mean. So I think in the years to come it will happen, and as the game grows. But I just think right now we're not fully there.
yeah. No, I agree absolutely. Finally, then you've got the book launch this evening, which I believe is also for charity, the food banks. Um, Steve McMahon and Kevin Sheedy are both involved on the evening. How much are you looking forward to that tonight?
I think stressed at this very moment in time, but yeah, hopefully it should be a good night. There's a lot of effort and planning gone into it, but hopefully it's something that it doesn't really happen too often. Kevin Sheedy talking about being a Liverpool player, and Steve McMahon talking about being an Everton player, because obviously they've both got a full family in one camp over the other, and I think just on that basis it'd be interesting, and obviously just to hear them speak, and then obviously they're taking questions from the fans, and I think it'd be a good insight into what it is for certain players exactly. Obviously I tried to get to speak to as many as I could for the book, but maybe to hear them say it and watch them say it would be a little bit different. But yeah, and then obviously on top of that, to raise money for fan support and food banks, which I think as I go later on in the book, I just try and show that I think it's quite sad that this rivalry is growing to the bitter hatred it is today. And I don't think there's anyone or any initiative that's been better in uniting Liverpool and Everton and fan support and food banks. So it'd be great to support them as well. And yeah, hopefully it's a good night and it's worth all the stress and effort. And, yeah, at the end of it, I can have a pint and relax, and maybe a lie-in tomorrow. That would all be nice.
Absolutely. And for anyone hoping to go tonight, is a ticket still available for it?
Yeah, there's still a few left, yeah. So I'm doing pay on the door, 'cause I know a few people are, so you can do that, or you can still get them through Skiddle. Yeah, it's £20 entry. As I say, all proceeds are going to charity. I'm not making any money off it. It's literally just to pay for the entertainment. So I've got music on, there's food there, there's obviously the two ex-footballers, and there's a boss raffle as well. But yeah, it's £20 to get in. The books are £15 if you get there, and you can get a VIP package where you get like a free drink and table service and all that. But yeah, if you come along, it's Hotel Anfield, doors open at 6:30, starts at like 7:30, and yeah, I think there's still a few left, so come along if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Peter, thanks very much for joining me. I know it's a busy day for you with everything going on, so I really appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck at the launch tonight. As I say, it's a fantastic read so far. That as far as I am into it, it's a honestly brilliant read, and we should be proud. There's been a lot of effort gone into it, clearly.
Oh, nice. Well, I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much. And I'll be here for the next one. And I'll have more than half an hour defo for you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No worries, mate. Thanks very much.
Thank you.